what's up, man? Little gangster rap theme going on there. What's up with that?
Love it.
Oh man, what's up, brother?
Man, I'm good. How are you?
Doing fantastic, man. Great to have you on. Appreciate your flexibility and jumping in here to jam and hang out with us today as freshly kicking off the new Coach Code podcast this year. And I've got a long list of people that I want on, and man, I was like, got to get Joel, because I know we're gonna get into the weeds. We're gonna get into the details, and so I appreciate you making the time and jumping in with us.
Yeah, man, happy to be here. Thank you. I always look forward to these.
Yeah, for sure. And for folks kind of tuning in and listening, man, I would love for you to give a little the Cliff Note version, a little bit about yourself, so I have some context as we listen in. And for all of you guys tuning in, pay attention. Joel is a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge, being able to not only the real estate side, but also to scale their media company and to fast growing. I know we'll talk about it, all the ups and downs to, start from scratch to a little over 6 million in revenue last year and definitely continuing to make that push and growth this year. So Joel, kind of give a little bit of the lowdown about yourself.
Yeah. So I got into real estate in 2012. My first job in real estate was as a transaction coordinator. I was the only kind of non-sales person on a sales team. And so I sort of naturally started absorbing operational, financial, marketing, kind of anything non-sales, just slowly started to end up on my plate just because I'm wired that way. So I was the only analytical one. Probably the only organized one, and on a team with a bunch of rock star salespeople who just needed somebody like me. So as that team grew, we got connected with the NAEA in 2014. Pretty quickly got connected with you, coaching us directly. You coached us from just over 100 to just over 400 transactions in 3 years. And so that was a huge learning curve for me. Once I pretty quickly became the top of the operational chain on the team, that stayed put. So every time we grew, there was a whole new set of things I had to learn, a whole new set of mistakes I had to make. So ultimately left that team in 2017. Started my own brokerage for a little bit, and then for the past 4 years, I've been working with VRX Media Group, company started by my business partners in the brokerage, and we're digital media and marketing. So we're doing photography, Matterport, drone, virtual staging, some other services for real estate agents and brokerages, and we're in just over 50 cities. We've got about 120 on the team now, and like you said, did just over 6 million in revenue, and that's in about five years in business. So we've been moving pretty quick, and we're shooting for 8 million this year, and so far early, but we're on track for 8 million this year, and then looking to keep going beyond that. We're still a small fish in the real estate game, but we're growing fast and having fun.
Yeah, there's, man, a lot of rabbit holes that we can definitely jump down into on the operational side of things. I think one of the things about your story that I love the most, and this is good for people listening in, is that starting out in the trenches, right? Starting out as a TC and quickly working your way up to head of operations for a company in the real estate space doing well over 2 million in revenue. Is nothing to shake a stick at, because you look at in the real estate game, less than 1% of the real estate agents earn over 1 million in revenue, and so for you guys to be able to not only get up to over 1 million, but get to 2 million at that point, there's a lot of lessons learned to get there, and so and at the time too, I think this is important to understand, because people are like, well, depends upon where you're at, right? Like 1 million in revenue. Oh, that's nothing. I sold 15 homes last year and did that. Like, get out of here. You ain't got problems. So,
Right.
when you're doing 2 million in revenue, 400 units and juggling an operation at that size, there's a ton of lessons learned. And I know it served you extremely well transitioning those principles into VRX Media, taking it into a whole nother different organization. Now we still play in the real estate space, but it's a completely different game. And
Yeah.
so I would love to unpack some of those key principles that you developed inside of the brokerage that has, carried over to VRX to allow that growth. And guys listening, you guys listening in, like, it's a foundation. Operations is a foundation that has to be built if you want to scale and grow anything of any substance. And so just keep that in mind, as we're going to kind of going through the conversation today. And, we nailed it kind of on a key point as we kind of were teasing the call, as managing the chaos, because, without foundation, without systems, without process, it is absolute chaos. But we've got to build a strong foundation. And we would always, think about it this way, right, Joel, is that you look at the skyscrapers, or even look at building a home, right? Nothing happens. You drive by it every day. Nothing's happening. But really what's happening is that foundation's getting built. And the taller the infrastructure, the deeper the footing. And you look at a home, you have footings. You look at skyscrapers, you have deeper footings. And so the taller the infrastructure, the taller the entity, the taller that you want to build, the deeper you have to go. That's the way I always liken it. I mean, I would love, for you to kind of touch on that a little bit. And what are some of those key foundational principles that you still lean on to this day?
Yeah. I mean, it's spot on. And I love the analogy too. So, well, let me tell you the story of why I picked that headline for this one first, because it ties into all the principles, all the operational, things that we've learned over the year. And that was, all your problems are leadership problems. And so I stole this one from Jocko Willink, who wrote Extreme Ownership and the Dichotomy of Leadership. Yep. His consulting company tells a story of getting in there with an executive team, and the chief financial officer saying, man, we got business units that aren't profitable and managers who aren't, getting it done. And the chief operating officer says, man, we got inefficiencies all over the place, and we got these managers who aren't getting it done. And the CEO says, man, we got, leaders all over the company who don't understand the vision. And Jocko's just sitting there, and they said, what do we do? And he said, man, all your problems are leadership problems. You got people who don't understand the vision. That's on you for not communicating it. You got managers who don't understand how to build processes. That's on you. You've got, business units that aren't profitable. That's on you too. And so just starting off the year with that mindset, that extreme ownership mindset of, man, everything in my world is my responsibility. And it's, man, the bigger our company gets, the more that true this becomes, is that all of our problems are leadership problems.
100%.
And so coming at operations from a leadership perspective has been a little bit of a shift for me. And this from coaching us, is I kind of resisted taking on more leadership responsibilities when we had the brokerage. I was like, hey, no, we got my partner. He's the visionary. I'm the integrator. He can be out front. I'll be behind the scenes. And you had to be hard on me. Just, that's not good enough. And so growing into leadership's been my biggest challenge in business. But so many of the principles of leadership are the operational principles too. So that's kind of why I picked that title for this one, even though we'll probably get into the weeds a little bit with building processes and managing the chaos stuff. So, man, the big one, and I think about this all the time because it's so crucial, is you always say there's two that go hand in hand. You always say right things, right order. Yeah. And then for me, the one that I'm always talking about is right people, right places. And man, you solve a lot of the management problems that you hear people complain about when you have the right people. And that's a challenge. A small business, maybe you hired people you knew, maybe people didn't grow with the company as the company's growing and they need to be moved out. maybe you need a better hiring process. Maybe you need to get clearer on, what kind of skills and experience that position's going to need. But when you get the right people on the bus and you have them in the right seats, it changes everything. They're going to help you build the processes. They're going to identify the bottlenecks and the problems, so you guys can go about fixing them. When you hire smart people and listen to them, it makes everything so much easier. So that's just a fundamental one that we talk about every day in our business. We've got a pretty large operations team now. All the department heads report to me. So our photo editing, video editing, delivery and processing, hiring and training, coaching and development, all those department heads, we just got absolute rock stars in now. And that's filtering down into the rest of the company as well, where they recognize the kind of people they want to work with, and that's who they're bringing in on their teams. So that's just fundamental, is just like right things, right order. It's having the right people in the right places within the organization is just fundamental to having any kind of success anywhere else you go.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I love that. There was a lot there to kind of unpack, and I love leaning into the extreme ownership mindset, and that's really where it has to start. I know what we reveal we can heal, and that really came from working with Mark Chesley, who was CTO for Infusionsoft, as we were working with the leadership team and Clay and everybody at Infusionsoft, and we did some one-on-one consulting for about a year with Mark. And, Mark kept beating that into our heads, right? Like you have to live by that principle of, taking that extreme ownership, taking accountability, the 100-0. We could always do something different, right? If something falls through the cracks, we could have always done something better. We could have dialed in the process. We could have dialed in the procedure. We could have just dialed it in a little bit better. We could have been a little bit more clear. And I think the biggest thing, Joel, to convey to people out there listening is like, don't beat yourself up. Like, there's certain things that you don't even have a level of awareness until it breaks.
Yeah.
But you want to create that culture of, hey, we need to reveal the cracks so we can get it fixed if we want to continue to grow. And I think that's just so important to understand, is that, hey, we need to look at this as a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And you can attest to this, because I know you've seen it and experienced it, is that sometimes leaders in an organization make the organization feel bad about things breaking. And that's the wrong type of leadership capabilities and skill set that you want to instill into the culture, is that you want things that break to be a good thing, because that allows us to improve upon the process. And so you, as a leader, have to instill that. One, you have to have that belief yourself, and then you've got to be able to convey that to the rest of the organization, that, hey, it's good that things are breaking. It means we're doing things.
Yeah. A lot of times, we talk about right things, right order. A lot of times that's how that's the right things in the right order, right? So like you said, don't beat yourself up. We had, a huge focus for us in 2021 was training and hiring processes. Yeah. Well, hey, why didn't we have really good training program yet? Well, because in 2020, we were building out our operational capacity. Well, how come that wasn't ready? Well, because in 2019 and all before that, we were just trying to sell, make enough money to keep going. So if you're selling real estate or anything else, and you're in you got to make some money, period, well, maybe you don't have time yet to build out everything you want to do. You don't need everything to be done immediately. And yeah, just you're spot on. When something breaks, hey, great, now we know where the issue is.
That's good, man.
And as more of them break, you start to get better at spotting the ones that are going to break. Maybe you can get ahead of them. It's one of the fun parts about growth, is having more capacity. You can bring that next hire on. You can bring that, key hire, and you start growing the capacity to get ahead of problems. But you never totally do. There always something breaks, and yeah, that has to be a part of the culture. Mm-hmm. And leadership has to set the tone for that. Without a doubt. I think that's one of the keys to our success, without a doubt, is our founder Nate. He's just obsessed with problem solving. And that's permeated our entire company because of his example of getting excited about it. All right, cool. We got a problem to solve. Let's talk about it. Let's get after it. There's no time for negativity. There's no room for blame. And it's just, problem solving is a part of our culture as a company. That started with leadership. And that's talk about, things that scale. That's an organizational, value and behavior that scales no matter what. We got new problems, bigger problems, always room to grow, but an organization that can solve problems, quickly and effectively, that, you never outgrow that need. And so that's something that, without a doubt scales to any size organization.
Yeah, 100%, man. You can't fix what you don't know is broken, right? You got to have that level of awareness. The one thing that I would say, and this goes back to, the analogy of building a solid foundation. And when I left California and I came back and I was working with my best friend out of high school, he had a construction company, and we did, we traveled the country, and we did a lot of the rough frame of these franchise restaurants, your Chili's, your Applebee's, type of operations. And then we would come back and do the final punch out. So we were there to rough frame. We would walk on a slab. We would do the rough frame. We would leave town. We would come back and do the final punch out. We would, all the decor, punch out, everything, just getting it ready to get occupancy so that the business can open. And the name of the company was On the Rock. OTR Construction was what it was. And the ironic thing about it, Joel, is that ain't none of us a bunch of religious folks. And we got this company called On the Rock. And if you go into the book of Matthew, there's a verse in there that talks about building your home either on sand or on a solid foundation.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the point. But here you got a bunch of degenerate jackasses out there on the road that are,
right.
Not arguably have great hearts, but not the ideal best human beings. And, you pick up construction people that are, in need of a job because they just had their last little stint in jail. That's the type of crew, you got to roll with. And here we are with, this On the Rock construction in this foundation. And it's just funny. So I've always understood that from an operational standpoint, is that we've got to build on solid foundation. We can't build, an entity of sticks on sand, because the bigger we build, that just tells me it's going to crumble. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And so being able to have that, the other thing that you were talking about, and I would love, for you to unpack this a little bit. And this falls back to that A player type of mentality. And when we say A player, right, this is what we're looking for, our A players, is that A players by definition are individuals that can give the given function done 90% of the time. They can get the result, they can get the desired outcome for that function 90% of the time in a given pay range. And so what we have to understand, and this is another principle that we got from Clay, was ones and threes, is that the team that got you to $1 million might not be the team that can get you to 3.
Yeah.
And the team that got you to 3 probably is not going to be the team that can get you to 10. And that involves everybody. The only person that and sometimes this does too as well, Joel. Sometimes it usually doesn't affect the CEO and the visionary, because they're the ones with the grand aspirations. They're the one. Now, if you have a growth-oriented CEO, possibly growth-oriented, maybe not even founder. I think you can out even grow from a founder's position. But, most of the time, those people are growth-oriented, and they're always pushing and growing. But they're doing a good job at surrounding themselves with people that are going to push them to grow even more. So ones and threes. And so talk a little bit about, as you've seen, even with the real estate organization, but even carrying that over into VRX, how you've seen, growth and outgrowing and identifying next key hires. Cause like you said, you guys made a ton of critical hires over the last couple of years with VRX to be able to get to where you guys are at. And the run rate is continuous growth even this year. What have you seen from a people dynamic as you continue to grow?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started in full time, I was still working in the brokerage that we had started up until 2017. And when I came in 2017, we were just under $1 million in revenue. Absolutely still in the phase of everybody's wearing multiple hats. A lot of the teams overworked, stressed out, getting burnt out, because we were focused on growth, getting enough sales done to make payroll. That's where we were really in 2017. Yeah. So a lot of the luxuries that we have now in terms of what we can do with staffing, we just didn't have then. So, coming into that, for me, it looked a lot like, and again, getting back to principles that scale, just I had to understand the organization better, and then set about understanding the root problems and not focusing my efforts on band-aids, or symptoms of those problems, but really identifying what are the key problems we have here. And then we have to set about, all right, now that we're clear, what's the goal? What's really the goal? Now we're clear. Okay, what are all the ways we could solve that? Okay, what's the best way? And that's another, thing I learned from you and Jay that we use every day. What's the goal? What's really the goal? It works the same thing with a problem. What's the problem? Well, what's really the problem?
Exactly.
Sometimes you're going down 3-4 deep until you really get to the problem. And if you spend all your time, addressing the symptoms and not getting to the root cause, then you never get off that treadmill. So for me, I spent a lot of time really identifying some of the problems. And it boiled down to a couple key processes that, we were doing that were redundant or ineffective or just inefficient. And so addressing a couple of those things. And then in the beginning, it was just one key hire, that one key position that saved everybody, because it freed up, everybody else in the organization to take one little hat off and focus on what they were doing. So a salesperson who was also doing photo editing or something like that, well, now they just get to do sales. A photographer who was also doing sales now can just be a photographer, and now we can shoot more in a day and make more money in a day. So that the first thing, it came down to really understanding the problems, a couple fixes, and then one key hire. And again, right people. We had all the right people, but they were either in the wrong seats or in too many seats. And people, if you've hired good people, which we always did, to our credit, we've always been pretty good at identifying great people, or moving on from bad hires quickly. But once they're in the right seat, they're doing the right thing, they're happier, you're happier, and people tend to blossom when they're in the right spot. People that you weren't sure about, they flourish when they're in the right seat, working on the things that are good match for them. So early on, these are, again, principles that scale, getting to the root problem and getting really clear on the goals. And then let's take it from there. We've got clear goals now, because we identified the problems. We have clear priorities, and now we can goal set and work on what's the right meeting rhythm of when we're going to plan strategically and tactically. So another principle that scales right there, the meeting rhythm. The meeting rhythm might change, but having a dialed in meeting rhythm, whether that's just you meeting with your assistant or it's in a big company with a whole executive team, what's the meeting rhythm? We're going to address our priorities. We're going to take a look when those priorities need to shift or change. So I threw a lot there, but a lot of those foundational things, again, they all scale, those principles, if you get them down.
They really do. And, I love what you were saying there, is like, what's the real problem? And I was saying earlier is that the only way you have problems is if you're taking action. And this is what I always challenge the agents. They say, so what are you wrestling with? Like, what's the constraint that's slowing your progress to have a greater output of what you're trying to accomplish? Two things that I've always noticed, and I think you can attest to this is, one, they don't know the desired outcome. So they don't even know where they're being held up. Yeah. And they're not moving in a known direction. They're not moving from point A to point B. They're in more of a circular type of space. And then secondary is that they may think they know where they want to go, but they ain't doing shit. And that's why they don't have anything that's breaking, is because they're not doing shit. And that's what I would always challenge our agents on, is like, hey, what's the constraint that you're dealing with the most? Well, I don't have any problems. Then I'm like, you ain't doing enough.
Yeah.
Because if you were, you would know exactly what your problems are. And then what you just said, what carries over is that when we know the problem, then we know we've got the right strategy, because all strategy is solving the right problem.
Yeah.
And so us as leaders can't help our people if they're not aware of what the problem is. And two, that's another thing. There's most people lack awareness, or the ability to have an awareness. And so that's where you just want to keep pushing. What's the goal? Is that really the goal? What's slowing you down? What can make you go faster? And this is that leadership shift as the game changes. And the game changes for most folks around 4 or 5 people. You go from playing checkers to playing chess. Yeah. And the beautiful thing that you have to understand about those two different games, it's the same board. It's the same board. But what changes are the pieces. Checkers, all the pieces are the same. Chess, you become a little more specialized. And everybody has a different function, has a different responsibility, has a different skill set, has a different outcome. And you have to look at your business, if you're serious about going from solopreneur lifestyle, and there's nothing wrong with building a lifestyle business at all, but you're still going to need some leverage, and you're going to get to a point to where you're not using checker pieces. You need some chess pieces around you. Yeah. And it's the easiest to understand. There's a really good small book called Checkers Not Chess. Real super small, quick read. I mean, literally you can probably sit down and, over lunch and have it read, but it talks about that principle, those concepts to that. It's that simple. It's like, y'all, the game's changed. And, if you're getting frustrated with the output of your people, it's that you don't have an awareness that you're playing a different game. And you've got to start surrounding yourself with people that complement your weakness. And, what we're always striving for is, what am I the best in the world at that is going to give me the most fulfillment, that's going to move the needle in the business? And how do I create complementary pieces around me so we continue to grow? I'm a huge David Goggins fan, and he's always about, you gotta turn them weaknesses into strengths. I get it. I agree in life, but in business, you gotta understand what Gary Vee's saying. And what we're saying here right now is like, you got to get into the function that you're the best in the world at, and you've got to be okay with your weaknesses and get excited about it, because that's where you got to find the complementary pieces to support whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So, Joel, as you guys have grown and you've put those key pieces in place, how do you continue to manage and build trust within the organization? And here's another, maybe share this perspective. And I don't know if you want to unpack this, but being on the other side, and you and I have both been on the other side from an operational standpoint, to where trust has been broken at the highest of levels. And so maybe some perspective, because usually it takes our experience to be able to carry over, and we can borrow people's experiences, but you and I have had the actual experience to where trust is broken, and being able to have that reminder to carry that over and to make sure that I'm not breaking trust within the people that I'm leading or within the organization. So let's talk a little bit about maintaining and building trust from a leadership capacity within the organization.
Yeah. I've been on both sides of that one for sure. I've been the one doing the breaking of the trust, and then I've been on the receiving end of that, for sure. So I think, and I don't know where this is from, is one of my 2022 resolutions is to do a better job of keeping track of where I'm reading and hearing stuff. But but the analogy of a trust bank or a trust account, and the idea of making deposits so that you can make withdrawals.
Yeah.
And so what are the ways that you make deposits into that trust bank so that your team is trusting you? One is making good decisions. So they see that you make good decisions, and that's a deposit into the trust bank. For me, the biggest one has always been, to whatever degree is appropriate, including the team in the conversation. I say this a lot. Everybody doesn't necessarily get a say, but everybody has to have a voice. People need to feel heard. They need to voice their concerns, or they're not going to be bought into the vision, and then they're not going to be on board with the decisions if you're making decisions they disagree with. So every time you include them in the conversation, that's a deposit. Not only that, but again, getting to our previous discussion, you're getting feedback on what the problems are, what might be broken that you're not spotting. Especially the larger the company gets or the organization, honest conversation with your people, where you're really listening to them that's one of the best ways that we're going to spot problems that we need to address anyway. But then they're included in that process. So those are huge trust deposits of, hey, he's listening to me. And maybe Joel doesn't always do what I think he should do, but he's including us in that conversation, particularly getting feedback from people who are going to be affected by the decision you're making. So if we got a major photo editing decision to make with a contract or a new editor, well, of course I'm going to have my photo editing director in that conversation, because she knows exactly what's going on. But now she knows that I value her opinion, and if I have to make a decision she's unsure about, she'll actually say to me, hey, all right, like, I trust you. I don't get it, but I trust you. So those are deposits in the trust bank. And when you have to make a withdrawal, that might look like a mistake. Or that might look like, hey, we had to move fast on something, and I didn't consult you guys like I normally would have. I had to make a call. Well, again, that's a small withdrawal, but there's enough trust built up there.
Sure.
Another deposit is always explaining why the decisions are being made, because it's not their job to see the whole picture. It's my job to see the whole picture. And so, we explain why these things are being decided, especially when that seems weird, or that might hurt a little bit, or that's a challenge that we're going to have to tackle as a team, explaining why. So yeah, if they making good decisions is always the best way. We all know we're not going to do that 100% of the time. But if you're getting feedback, including the team in the discussion, explaining why, those are some of the best ways to build trust with the team. They'll feel valued, and they can buy into the vision when they feel like they're a part of that conversation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, everybody listening, you have to understand the three components of vision. And this goes back to, why we always lead with our core values, because our core values are shoulds and should nots, and how we should behave within our organization. So if your team understands and embodies and shares the similar values that the organization has, they're going to be making decisions in alignment to what we believe is to be true. And, having you on, you said it a couple times, right? It's all about right things, right order. And that's what I believe, right? That's what Coach Code is even all about. It's, I believe there's a code and a sequence to anything. And it's just putting things in right order to unlock the potential, unlock the outcome that we all potentially have in front of us. And so being able to understand that, but it from a vision standpoint, that's where it starts. It starts with our core values and who we are, but you give those decision-making filters to your organization. And if you don't have decision-making filters in your organization, people don't know how to make decisions. They don't know how they should behave. And what happens, Joel, and this, is that they depend upon you. And if you continue to be a resource for the people in your entity, and this is what happens when you're playing checkers, is that, most people starting out, they want to, hey, you got to come to me for everything. Well, guess what? You are making them be dependent upon you,
and you become the bottleneck.
You become the bottleneck. They will never grow.
Yep.
And if you are the resource for them, they will never become the who that you need in that function for the organization to grow. Yeah. You become the bottleneck. And so that's what we always talk about, Joel, is that, the size and scale of your organization is 100% dependent upon the size and scale of your leadership capabilities. And this goes back to, there are no problems, business problems, there are only leadership problems. And usually the leadership problem is us. We are the constraint. We haven't developed or improved that skill set to improve the bandwidth of our leadership capability so our organization can grow. You guys have got to get that if you want to grow. And so that's just, I mean, that's a must that has to happen there. And so being able to, know that, hey, I've got to be better if I want this organization to be bigger.
Yeah.
And so
and
back to vision, right? Right. Yeah. So the vision's there, but then it comes down to, what's the second component of vision? Second component of vision now comes down to our core focus. And what do we believe? What's our passion? What's our purpose? And what's our niche? That's our core focus, right? It keeps us focused on who we're trying to serve and what problems that we're trying to solve, right? Mm-hmm. What problem does VRX Media solve for this? And this is our focus. And then the last is the goal, right? The BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal that the organization has. And us as leaders have to nail that first. The vision drives everything, right? Code and sequence to everything. It always starts with the vision. What's the vision? So if you sit down with me, sit down with you sit down with anybody, and the first thing is, hey, what are you trying to accomplish? What's the vision? What's the goal? What are we trying to do? And that's where it has to start. And as you're bringing team members on, they have to understand what the vision is. And, one of my favorite definitions of trust is authenticity times time. Consistency times time is what builds trust. And so us as leaders, if we're making decisions and moves to grow the entity, we're going to be, we may ping and pong, we may hear something great, and then we run back to our team, but it better be in alignment to the vision, or they're going to be like, what the hell's going on here?
Yep.
And they ain't going to listen to you.
Right.
But if they know it's in alignment to the vision and what we're trying to accomplish, and we're not breaking who we are at our core, it's alignment to what we stand for, and is it in pursuit of the bigger picture, the bigger goal. And the one I always like to share is, what the guys did at NAEA. And, the goal, the vision, the big, hairy, audacious goal was 2,000 partners by X date. And when you're concrete and you're cemented in on the vision, then it goes to, what are all the ways? What's the best way? Can we get there faster? Then that comes to model. And so, the guys didn't have a level of awareness until they were kind of forced into a level of awareness. And then they just seen it. They were just like, shit, we can shift up the model and we can get there faster. And they didn't think they could get there as fast as they did, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
And so, when and you're cemented into the vision, then what are all the moves?
Yeah.
How do we change the model? How do we keep tweaking? What do we shift here in pursuit of that big grand vision that we have for our business? And it's the same principle. It carries over, Joel. It carries over into your life. And so, it's all the same principles. And that's what I hope people take away from our conversation today is, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Principles are principles. I mean, we could be talking about, running, a line of lemonade stands this summer. Yep. We're still going to run through the same process. It's still the same fundamentals that gets you to do anything that you want to do.
Yeah, man, spot on.
What are
And what a, talking about building trust, what a way to destroy trust by from a leadership perspective, not being focused on the vision, losing sight of the goals. Everybody in the organization will see it if you're chasing things this way and that way, and off course. Everybody knows it. So yeah, what a better way to build trust than keep the company on, or the organization on course. You said it, you communicated it, and now you got to stick to it.
So true. And us as leaders, that's what we always talk about, discipline and consistency, is that in that role, people are looking to you and they're making decisions in their life and with their family based upon, your leadership and your leadership capabilities. And I probably said it, but I'll say it again. Leadership is a skill. So anything that is a skill can be developed. And, if you're not pouring into your leadership development, you're putting a ceiling on your potential. It's one of those things that you're a never-ending student of leadership. We talked about Jocko and extreme ownership. I think that is one of the key traits and values, and maybe it's something you aspire to until it becomes something that's core.
Yeah.
You have that. I love what Gary Vee's coach talks about, and she has really instilled this into Gary and Vayner, is a culture of accountability, and really talking about what accountability is. There's 3 legs to accountability that carry into the culture. And remember, what we're talking about, Joel, is culture is just a collection of your people. And you talked about it, is that, it's what we do. How do we show up every day? That's our culture.
Yeah.
That's how we behave. And so if you want higher accountability, you have to understand what accountability is. And, it's simple, right? What are you going to do? When are you going to get it done by? And then third, this is where most people like, oh, hey, there's a third thing to accountability. Yeah. How am I going to know you got it done?
Yeah.
And if you as a leader aren't pushing on that with your team and say, hey, great, you're going to do this, you're going to get it done by when? Okay, well, how am I going to know it got done?
Yeah.
You as a leader have to, one, know that, but you also got to demonstrate that. You got to live it. So the accountability culture is not allowing any excuses to creep in. And so the second they start trying to give you an excuse, you got to be like, hey, hold on. I love you, support you. I believe in you. I just want to know what you're going to do about it moving forward. Period. I don't want to hear your excuses, because it's all bullshit. It's all made up. Because you're not probably because you're not owning it. You're not owning that you let the ball drop.
Yeah.
And I ain't mad at you. We're all human beings. We're going to drop the ball. There's going to be times we don't feel like doing things. There's going to be things that we get overwhelmed. There's things that we don't, it's just going to happen. But what are you going to do about it moving forward?
Yeah. Yeah. And the self-accountability as the leader is the agreements versus expectations, right? So, that not only to hold them accountable, but holding yourself accountable means everything's clear for the team member, right? They need to know just as much as you need to know what does finished look like, what does completed look like. This cycles back into building trust is, one of the most important agreements to have with a team member is what does success look like in their position, and how are we going to measure that? If you ever find yourself spending time arguing about whether or not it happened, you're off course, right? Yeah. It should be immediately apparent if the goal's not met, if the performance isn't there, because you should have everything set up that way to begin with. So now we're not arguing about whether or not you did a good job. We got the numbers right here. We have the metrics right here. We have the information because we set it up that way. What we're talking about now is, like you said, what are we going to do going forward? How are you going to own it? How are you going to fix it? How are we going to get back on track? And that's just a time sink if you find yourself arguing about whether or not it happened.
That's a great point.
You're off track already. So
Yeah, such a great point, man. I just thinking through some things there as we kind of grow, and you nailed it, man. I mean, I think within any relationship and as you continue to grow, if you don't nail that one concept of agreements versus expectations, you're gonna live a business life, even a personal life of frustration and letdown. And agreements are what is our definition of success. An expectation is something that we will be let down 100% of the time. Anytime that we have an expectation with another human being, we will be let down 100% of the time. It's just a matter of time. And so what is the agreement of success? And I always the little funny thing that drives me crazy even to this day, not so much anymore. I think we've got a pretty good agreement around it. But, when the trash can gets full, take the trash out. And I love, I got this from Coach Burt. And with in his entity, he goes, I believe everybody in the organization takes the trash out. That means that nobody is above anybody else in this organization. If the trash can's full, you take the trash out. And that's a belief, but we have an agreement around that. Hey guys, anytime the trash can's full, whoever sees it, it's your responsibility to load it up and take it out. And people
always ask you, well, how do we build a culture? That's right there.
Yeah.
We have an agreement to enforce the behavior we want to see because that's who we want to be as an organization. That's it. It's right there. That's how you build a culture.
That's it, man. I listened to, there was a fantastic podcast. It was like one of the very first podcasts I listened to on some, I'd even have to go back. I can't even tell you what podcast it was, but it was CEO has 3 leadership responsibilities. And I was like, okay, I got to check this out. And number 1 was culture. Number 1 responsibility as a head of your company is culture. And culture is a collection of your people, but collection of your people is first driven by your values. And so always talking about your values. Yeah. And that's what he said. He said, the example of this, how you live and embody a culture, and is always talking about your values. So for us, even my, organization right now, we hired a fractional COO that's taken us through in implementing the EOS from Gino Wickman's EOS into our organization. And, we've got a lot of the pieces done. I mean, we've really lived that type of, structure for the last 5 years plus. And then obviously, we were students of Vern Harnish for the 10 years prior. So it just really is just wired into who we are and how we operate and how we think. And so we're moving real fast with her. Things that would take, 3 times as long, we're flying through because we've just done so much of the work.
Yeah.
But that's what those values really instill. And are you talking about them every day, every week? Are you shouting it out? So that was number 1 responsibility. Number 2 responsibility was people. And your job as head of company is to fill the boxes and be aware of who's in too many boxes. What's the hiring plan? What are you doing to support, create leverage, get people into the lane that they're the best in the world at?
Yeah.
And make sure you have a clear agreement of success for what they do and not leaving it up to an expectation. And then 3rd is the numbers. You're responsible for the numbers. And then you go back to what Gino talks about in that function, what Vern talks about in that function. Your number 1 job as head of company is, like I said, fill the boxes, but also you're responsible for the vision. You're responsible for making sure that we're making traction in pursuit of the vision. And then, I got this from one of out of Roland Fraser's group training and stuff that kind of going through being aligned with him. One of his key people who's absolutely brilliant. His name is Adam Lyons, and Adam's responsibility for head of company is he calls head of common sense. And I love that. I love that. So like, on mine, my position is, just, we have fun job titles. Everybody has a fun title, and mine's been, chief legacy officer, but I'm thinking I'm changing mine to head of common sense is going to be my new job title, because things that we see as common sense sometimes is just not common. And so can we help them accomplish and get clear, keep it simple. But our jobs as leaders, Joel, is the culture number one, the people number two, and then we have to be responsible to the numbers and making sure that we're hitting our targets and making sure the team knows the targets, because I think that right there is what we're talking about. That comes down to the agreement.
Yeah.
What is the measurement of success for what you do? What is the measurement of success for this organization?
Yep.
And everybody has a number.
Wonder.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody has to have a number.
I love the fractional COO thing too. And I think this is a really important principle too, is like on the surface, I'm surprised you do that because you have so much expertise in that area, but it's such an important principle too. It's like, that's not your job anymore. And that's not the highest and best use of your time in the organization. So bring somebody in who can do it maybe at an even higher level, because you're head of company. And even though you'd be exceptional at that because of your experience, that's not your job anymore. That's not the best use of your time anymore. So that's that's another principle that scales too, is, what's the best use of your time? And if you find yourself not spending enough time in that zone, then what can you delegate? What could you automate? What could you eliminate? What could you hire out? You got to be ruthless with that.
Yeah, I love it, man. Well, brother, I appreciate you jumping in, adding a ton of value as always in every conversation that we have. And, for folks that are tuning in, best way to connect with you, I know we've got it here, but this will also go into the audio platform on the podcast platform. And so if you guys listening in are not subscribed, go over to coachcodepodcast.com, get subscribed on any and all. We're on all platforms, Spotify, Apple, Audible. I don't know. There's almost double digit places that you can tune in and listen. So we'd appreciate the love. I'll pull an Andy Frisella on everybody. If you found value in this and want to continue to find more value, the tax is that you go subscribe. So little bribe there to go subscribe. But if they want to follow you, they can connect with you pretty much everywhere at Joel Perso.
Yep. I'm most active on Facebook, but you can find me most places.
Yeah. Joel's a wealth of knowledge. It's been fun getting to know him over almost a decade now, and being able to work hand in hand, and excited and also proud of what you guys are doing, what you're able to accomplish. And it's no small feat to be able to take a company from, almost nothing to 6 million plus in revenue and continuing to grow, not slowing down. So it's fun to see, and a ton of principles and things that carry over no matter what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate you. And we'll catch you guys soon. See ya.